New York and New Jersey took some action not to go forward with plans for indoor dining in New Jersey on Thursday. Is that just from looking at anecdotally what's happening in the other states, or was it something happening in New Jersey that would cause Governor Murphy to make that decision?
Well, I don't know exactly why they made the decision, but I think it was a number of things. First of all, we saw the cases tick up a little bit in New Jersey, a very small increase, but it had been declining and it sort of flattened out and then ticked up a little bit. There's also been some reporting of spread within restaurants. We now have a number of reports, credible reports from public health authorities, where we've seen outbreaks and clusters of infections that were forged inside restaurants. And we know indoor congregate settings are high risk. Restaurants seem to be a conduit of spread. And to the extent that restaurants and indoor venues in New Jersey weren't adhering to all the requirements that they had put in place, or people weren't adhering to all the requirements for masking, for social distancing, I think that's what prompted the governor's decision. This is sort of preemptive, as opposed to what we're seeing in the South right now, which is reactive. And, it's going to be hard to catch up to the rate of infection that they're having down there. It's going to be really a slow process, I think, trying to get ahead of this in those states.
Yeah. There was the study in New York, and the mortality came out at 0.7. That's about what you've been saying, right? And 20% total infections?
So this was a good seroprevalence study done by Mount Sinai. It's very consistent with the other studies. So we can start to believe that this probably represents an approximation of what the real result is. It shows that by late April, April 19th to be exact, about 20% of New York was infected with COVID. So a city of 8.4 million people, that's about 1.7 million people. That's pretty consistent with the seroprevalence study that was done by New York State about 2 months ago. And it also showed the infection fatality rate, not the case fatality rate, but the infection fatality rate was about 0.7%. Now, the difference is the infection fatality rate is how many people who get coronavirus end up dying. The case fatality rate is how many people who get COVID, who become symptomatic, end up dying. We typically look at the case fatality rate, but this looked at all comers. It looked at everyone who became infected. So the case fatality rate would likely be a little higher, maybe more like 1.1 or 1.2%, because about 20 to 40% of people who get infected never develop symptoms. So this is capturing more. But it's pretty consistent with what we thought. We thought that the case fatality rate would be somewhere between 0.5 and 1%. So this puts it in that ballpark. I think it's probably a good result because it's very internally consistent with other studies that we've seen. If you probably took that out to now, you did a seroprevalence study now, you'd probably see that the infection fatality rate's a little higher because more people succumb to the infection over the course of time from April to now. And you'd probably see that the seroprevalence is a little higher because more people have gotten infected. So my guess is probably around 25% of New York has now been infected with COVID.
Becky.
Hey, Dr. Gottlieb, just back to your point about how hard it is to have reactive measures and try and get your arms around this virus like they're doing in the South right now. In Arizona, rolling back things for bars and for gyms and other areas like that is one thing. But these restrictions don't apply to restaurants or to churches. And they are in a position of saying that they're going to have to delay the school openings. Right now, they're saying August 17th is the date they'd like to shoot for. Do you think that's a likely scenario to be able to open the schools at that point?
I think the schools in the South are going to get delayed. I don't think that they're going to be able to restart the school year. Now, they can take an interim step right now and just delay it by a couple of weeks or a month. They have to make decisions earlier. Those school years start earlier, so they have to make those decisions sometime in July, whether they're going to open the schools. I don't think they're going to be able to make those decisions. Now, again, I said before, I would be prioritizing opening the schools. I would do what it takes from a policy standpoint to try to get the infection rate down enough to open the schools, because that really is a gating factor to restarting the economy. If you can't get children back into schools, you really can't restart the economy in a robust fashion. And then there's just the implications for the kids themselves of not going back to school, which it's obviously very important for educational reasons, for social reasons, to get kids back in school. So I really think that should be prioritized. I'm not sure they're doing that from a policy standpoint because they're not attacking these epidemics in the South in a way that's going to have a dramatic effect. This is going to be a very gradual impact on this spread if they're able to have an impact at all. They will have an impact, but I think it's going to be a slow process here.